This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 81.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought, bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart. I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren, and today's episode is Kicking the Crap Out of Anxiety. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. I love it. Let's kick the crap out of some anxiety.
Yeah, first off, I just want to mention, John, that this is not talking about like anxiety disorders such as panic disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is PTSD, that a lot of soldiers suffer from, or like social anxiety disorder, which I have a friend that suffers from that, and it's really bad. And sometimes he doesn't even want to go outside of his house.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Stress is a part of our life. It's a natural part of our existence, and there's actually, when you talk about stress, it's often brought up in a negative light, but really, there is distress, which is the negative side of stress. There is eustress, which is the healthy or beneficial side of stress. And then there is relaxation, which is the absence of stress, which is just kind of letting it all hang out. And, all three components of stress have, some relevance and importance in our life. It sounds great to relax, and relaxing is great. But if you were just relaxing 100% of the time, you would not have any probably desire. You'd be just a gelatinous mass. You're not going to want to do anything. You're going to be ultra lazy and just be a blob. If that's your thing, then you probably shouldn't be listening to this show.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, John, because I was reading on verywell.com. There was one UK study where they found adolescents that suffered from anxiety had fewer accidents and accidental deaths in early childhood compared to those that did not have anxiety. And you're right. Sometimes if you're too calm, you're not paying attention. You're more likely to step in front of a bus than someone that's a little bit more high strung.
Yeah, stress. Then we get into fight or flight,
right?
Too, right?
It's a natural response,
which is a natural response. And I guess if you're feeling anxious, perhaps you should think about what you're really feeling anxious about. And I know, like, thinking back about when about 7 years ago, I guess now, when I was eliminated from my position, or my position was eliminated, and I was losing my job, and here my wife and I were finally, after so many years of trying, we're finally getting some traction with our financial plan, and it was distressful. It was really, really tough when things finally started going right and we started getting forward movement on something we wanted to do. Here, life throws us this major curveball. And it kind of got me thinking, it was like, instead of feeling anxious about it, I did feel anxious about it, but as I thought about why I was anxious, I realized that as long as, what I did for a living really didn't matter. I was going to provide for my family no matter what. I would work, at digging a ditch if I had to. I would work at McDonald's. I would deliver pizzas. I would just do anything I had to do to make ends meet. So what I did that didn't matter. What mattered was that we continued to move forward with our goals. And it's amazing once you come to that realization how it starts to refocus your energy. And anxiety can be a very negative type of energy that not only makes you feel bad, but it just gives you a very gloomy outlook of the world. But when you start to understand why you're feeling a certain way, it can help focus, reframe the problem and help you, help you gain some direction. And that just taking a step to reduce your anxiety can go, I think, go a long way.
Absolutely. What's funny is, the topic today, we were batting around what we're going to talk about. So I asked my wife, Jennifer, and she's like, why don't you guys talk about anxiety? Because she's suffering from anxiety this weekend. Like, she's really high strung this weekend. And, I was like, yeah, okay. So then just a little while ago, we're coming back. We went and got some Cold Stone ice cream. And we're coming back. She goes, does John suffer from anxiety? And I said, no, not really. And she's like, great. Two guys that don't suffer from anxiety talking about anxiety. But not to say that we have not, though. I might not suffer from it right now, but hey, I'm human and you're human, and we both know what anxiety is. It's not that we suffer from it all the time.
Yeah, and to say that we've never felt anxious, I'll tell you, I was so anxious as a kid. I remember trying out for like the Pony League baseball team. So that was my first experience with Little League baseball, okay? I was so nervous. I was so anxious. I could not even speak my name. The coach asked me my name, and I had to point at the sheet. I mean, I couldn't speak. I know what it feels like to be anxious. I know that feeling in the pit of your stomach. And when you were $250,000 in debt, okay, I know what anxiety feels like. It felt like such a crushing force, 1,000-pound gorilla on my back. And the difference is that I've learned how to deal with anxiety. And I've learned to harness those emotions and those feelings into something positive. And that's really what kicking the crap out of anxiety is all about.
Well,
it's turning into something positive.
Let's face it, we've all had those nights where all of a sudden your eyes just pop open. You maybe have a big exam the next day, or you have an interview at work, or something's going wrong in a relationship, and you can't get to sleep no matter how much you toss and turn. You look over the clock as like, another hour goes by, and that's that anxiety. And it sucks. I know last week I had an issue with someone at work, and it kept on going around in my head, and I left for the weekend, and I was thinking about it over and over and over, and I was making a bigger deal than it was. And I kept on playing this movie over and again in my head. Finally, I had to stop and say, hold on, I'm making this up in my mind, and I just need to reprogram myself. So every time I had that thought, I just told myself, I said, change the program, like I was a computer. And eventually I stopped thinking about that, but it took a while. It was driving me crazy.
Yeah. And that's so, that's so true. And I've been there as well. Especially with my job, been in a new role recently and feeling very shaky, feeling very anxious about the position. I think if you're in something new, or you're dealing with something new, you're going to feel very shaky and you're going to feel anxiety over the unknown. But when you starts thinking about why you're feeling the way you're feeling, it can help you recognize if it's, if there's good cause to feel anxious or not, and I guess the question is, when I start feeling anxious, I start thinking about the worst possible thing that could possibly happen. Okay. And I also think about what is the best possible outcome that I could have. Um, and when you do that, just remind yourself that when you're thinking about two opposite ends of extremes, that the statistically, it's very small chance that it would ever be one of those two extremes. We think in extremes, but the reality falls somewhere in between. Perhaps maybe even a combination of good and bad, depending on your view.
John, this is a perfect place for a quote that I had seen. It was by Renee Jane. And it says, "Don't believe every worried thought you have. Worried thoughts are notoriously inaccurate." And it's true. We have these fantasies in our mind of what's going to happen. And often it leads to, us being embarrassed or shamed in some way. Maybe we think we're going to lose a job. And, oh, my God, what are my parents going to think if I lose that job? Or how I'm going to, what are my coworkers going to, are they going to still respect me, and so forth. And a lot of times it's all in your head. And even if you did lose that job, those things don't happen. People are there to support you. They're not there to judge you.
I mentioned having my position eliminated about 7 years ago. And, I had never really thought of, for most of my career, I never thought about losing my job. That was not really a concern. But I was anxious about losing my job when I was so saddled in debt that, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have a job. So all that was really new. And going through that experience taught me that it's okay. If I would have lost my job, I would have done anything I needed to do. And I don't fear being let go again. It actually made me a stronger person, professionally as well as personally. It taught me, a great lesson. A lot of times, we get so worked up, and like you said, Tom, it's like playing a movie in your head. We're not fortune tellers. We can't tell the future, but
often we're not very good directors either, because the movies usually suck.
Yeah, and it's it comes down to wishful thinking. What you have in your head becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. As far as like, if you keep on telling yourself that something's going to happen, subconsciously, you're probably making decisions that are driving you in that direction. And you're setting up expectations for yourself of what to expect something to be, the reality, what you expect reality to be. It doesn't have to be like that. People talk about positive thinking, and the big secret out there was think positive thoughts and good things will happen, and in some regards that's true, and in other regards it's total BS. You can't count on just thinking a positive thought is going to change your life, but it can absolutely have benefits, and it can be helpful. When I'm going through a rough time in my life, I always, in fact, like every night before I go to bed or go to sleep, I think to myself, I was like, today was a pretty good day, but tomorrow's going to be better. It's going to be even better. And just those thoughts about kind of setting the stage for yourself for the next day after you wake up, it's amazing to me. If you how that plays out. If you tell yourself, man, I'm not looking forward to tomorrow, it's going to suck. You know what? Chances are it's going to suck.
And we've had an episode on this when we talked about the 48 laws of power, about not associating with people that are, Debbie Downers, because hanging around someone like that constantly pulls you down. And the same thing when you can do it to yourself. If you're having a lot of anxious thoughts and you're thinking all this negativity, it gets on you and you kind of exude it wherever you go. So you do have to kind of break that cycle. And that's where thinking positive does help. But I agree with you, John. It can be a little woo woo, and it's not a miracle pill. But being in a positive frame of mind and being an optimist helps you achieve what it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah, your attitude towards anything really is probably the largest determinant in you reaching that goal. Because if you keep telling yourself that you can't do it, guess what? You're not going to be able to do it. But if you keep telling yourself that you can, say, I can do this, and keep working at it, you will eventually get there.
Yeah, and it's okay to be scared. I mean, anxiety can actually help you become more motivated and feel more prepared for any challenge that happens. I mean, think of a race car driver when they're in their, it's really life or death, and they're racing in between these guys that are driving 200 plus miles an hour, and the senses are heightened. It's almost, and I think anyone's experiences is drove on a freeway, and especially if you've seen like an accident and when you're on a freeway, your mind is kind of like, it's like everything stops in slow motion, and you just start to react, and that's anxiety. That's it's saving your life. It's like you said, the fight or flight response kicking in.
It's really funny. That reminds me of a story. One of my good friends, Steve, he was out in Colorado and he was skiing, and he was one of the first people up on the mountain. So it was just pristine snow, virgin snow, not touched. They had a nice snowfall the night before and just fresh powder. And he said he's skiing down this, I guess, blue or black run. And he's skiing along, and he's like thinking how great it was. But then he started thinking about how great he was. and as soon as he started thinking about how awesome he was, guess what happened?
Yeah, he crashed and burned, right?
Oh yeah, he crashed and burned big time. He took his eye off the ball. Going back to stress. Stress is an important part of life. It keeps us alert. It keeps us on our toes, keeps us thinking, keeps us aware of our environment. Those are all very important aspects of life, especially in this world. Think about with our kids, Tom. When they're really young, when you come up close to a road, you have to hold their hands, because that they're not paying attention. They're not looking around them. They're not aware of their surroundings. And what can happen? Something terrible could happen if they walk out in front of a car in a parking lot because they're not paying attention. And I try to reinforce that with my kids all the time, that you have to be aware of your surroundings.
Absolutely. I remember that so much, walking with my kids through the parking lot. Same thing. I would always be like, I felt like they needed to learn the street smarts to survive, because you're right. They just kind of like fumble out and don't think about the consequences. But as an adult, that protective aura that we have around us is using anxiety, because we're thinking the worst, oh my God, my kid's going to step out and someone's going to run him over. Yeah. So we are super protective, and your eyes are darting left and right, and you're checking to see if brake lights are coming on, or if engines are started up, or if you see someone inside a car, you hesitate for a second. And those are all traits that eventually they'll learn and they'll pick up.
Right. But also you can hinder your child's development from overprotecting them as well, because you're not giving them the opportunity to learn that on their own. And as an adult, obviously, we've made it this far, and we've been aware of our surroundings good enough to, hopefully, to not get killed.
I agree with you, because when we were kids, it was less restrictive, less protective, you might say.
Yes.
And I can remember many times it's like darting out in front of a car and a car slamming on its brakes. And like, that's never happened to my kids. But, when I was a kid, me and you running around throwing oranges at people and, running out into traffic or throwing smoke bombs into traffic and the crazy stuff that we used to do. We always had, near misses.
Oh yeah. I mean, just, you count, it didn't seem so crazy at the time, but as you look back, you realize how crazy it was.
Yeah.
So back to, this feeling of anxiousness. what I like to ask myself is, can I change the situation? Am I worried about something that I can impact, or am I worried about something in which I cannot make any impact? My hands are tied. I couldn't change it if I wanted to. If that's the case, if you're worried about something that you can't change, my suggestion is to let it go, because worrying about it is not going to change. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to make it better. It's only going to make you feel terrible. And if you can't change something, why worry about it? My suggestion, again, let it go, and try to let it go. And it takes time to learn that, and to teach that to yourself. Even at this time in my life, when we're talking about anxiety and stress and how to manage it, it's a human feeling to feel anxiety.
John, I can give you a perfect little example of that. I might work. I work at a radio and TV station, or a bunch of them. And when I was working in just radio, I knew I was migrating to the TV side. We were going to combine our facility. And in my head, I was thinking, well, why are they going to need me? The TV has a bunch of engineers, where radio only has like two. And we're going to be coming here. Plus, automation is taking over the radio market. And I knew that there was plans on the table to consolidate all our radio stations basically into one supercomputer and run it from a central location, which means that, and it was a location that I was not going to be at. So I was like, well, are they still going to need me? And, for a while I had anxiety and, thinking I'm going to lose my job whenever we make this move. But finally I had to let it go because, I was like, all right, if it happens, it's out of my control and it's nothing personal. It's, it's business and it's progress. It's part of automation and the world today.
Yeah,
but I was assimilated into the TV group, and that didn't happen. They I'm still like the radio expert there on their side, but I could have let that overwhelm me, and I could have freaked out or went away and took another job or what have you. But I stayed stuck to my guns, and I'm still here. And I think that's an example of you could either fight or flight. I chose to fight as far as stay and see how I could be useful.
Yeah. I think too, especially in a corporate environment, you have to be willing to play. I'm not saying it's a game, but, in situations that you have really no control over, a lot of people will see that as a sign to get out. And certainly that's an option for anybody in that position, or to kind of try to ride out the storm, see what happens, and and then take it from there. A lot of us, I think, have knee-jerk reactions and just try to run at the first sight. But the question is really, and it all boils down to choices and decisions that we make about our lives. If what we're worried about, if we can make some type of impact, if we can do something about it to reduce our anxiety, taking even the smallest step will make you feel better. It's amazing to me. Just when we were, up to our eyeballs in debt, just sitting down and listing out every credit card, every debtor, anyone that we owed money to, coming up with that list made me feel better because I understood what we were up against. I didn't like it. I certainly didn't like it. Finding out that you're, almost $250,000 in debt, it's not a good feeling. But if you're in a crappy situation, you're going to feel crappy. That's good, because feeling, emotions are a tool that we can use to help us guide our way through life. If I was in a crappy situation and I didn't feel bad about it, I think that would be actually worse, because then you wouldn't know to do anything. And we talk about complacency on A Swift Kick in the Ass all the time, and complacency. And we had that meme of the deer like being complacent and drinking from the stream, and here's the mountain lion like right next to him. the deer doesn't know he's in trouble because they're just not paying attention. Maybe not feeling anxious at all about it. Maybe he's feeling relaxed, but all the time, danger is right there.
John, I like what you were saying about the how you laid everything out, because that's like knowing your enemy. If you equate it to war, when you think to World War II, we knew who our enemy was. It was the Germans. They had their hats with little spikes on it, or whatever it might be. We knew who the bad guy was. But then you come to Vietnam, and they didn't know who the bad guy was. There was little villager kids coming up and, here, you want some cookies, and giving them a bomb. And the anxiety there had to just be escalated to, out of this world.
Yeah. And isn't that just the foundation of terrorism as it stands today, is that modern warfare, I mean, if you don't know who your enemy is, and it could be anyone, it puts you on high alert. We talk about trust and communication, and trust is the foundation of communication. One of the reasons Tom and I have such good rapport is we trust each other. We've known each other basically all of our lives. But if there's someone that you're dealing with that you don't trust, you communicate with them differently. You question their actions. You ask them for more details about what did you mean by this, and the list just goes on and on. But I don't want to lose this point about the ability to change something. In some regards, our hands are going to be tied, and we're not going to be able to change the situation. If you're feeling anxious about things like that, try to let that go. And perhaps, as Tom noted in the beginning of the episode, maybe that means that's something serious, and maybe you need to talk to a professional about that anxiety, and get some coaching or some input from a professional as far as what you can do to specifically help you.
But it's also, anxiety is also a warning sign. Sometimes it could just be like, we talk about personal change. It might be the alarm saying, hey, it's time to change something. Yeah. Maybe we're not doing something, and anxiety really is because of our actions. And do we have an ability to change that outcome? And now, what they say, John, is about people that do suffer from anxiety, and this is some good points, is they say they make better leaders. Because what happens is they think of all the different outcomes and what could go wrong, and it makes them for a better, general or president or whatever it might be, because they tend to react faster to emergencies.
Now, I've shared on this episode and many other episodes about when my position was eliminated, but let's go back years before that. Here I was, and this is even before I got married. I was carrying debt from credit cards, from my college, student loans, and I had a good paying job, and I found very quickly that didn't matter how much money I made, it was taking me a lot longer to pay that all off, and I did feel quite anxious about that. And I think that's one of the reasons, I remember thinking, what would happen to me if I lost my job? I couldn't lose my job. I couldn't take that chance of losing my job. It was very stressed out about that. But, having my job eliminated and then making it through and actually coming out better on the other side did teach me that those fears, that anxiety was really unfounded. And it also put into motion these plans, these personal development plans to ensure that I don't have that anxiety. Putting yourself in a financial position to where you don't have to work is really my ultimate goal. Because I don't want to have that dependency anymore. I don't want to be dependent on a job in order to survive and support myself and provide for my family.
You want to live on your own terms.
Yeah. And so that is something that I do to be less anxious about work, because let's just face it, in today's work environment, loyalty just isn't necessarily always rewarded. And loyalty and staying with one company these days, I mean, it does happen. I've been with my company for a long time, but um, if they had to, if the company had a need to downsize, they would make a decision that may include, my losing my position again. I mean, it could happen. It's happened once, and I've known people to where it's happened multiple times. When that happens, all you can do is what you can do and take actions on your own to reduce that anxiety. Create an emergency fund. Ideally have 6 months of your cost of living saved, put it aside. If imagine if you didn't need a job and you had enough money set aside to support you and your family for 6 months. That's going to give you some cushion. That's going to make you less anxious. That's going to make you put less pressure on you to find a new job. Unfortunately, I think most people live paycheck to paycheck. And if you're really bad off, I mean, you're not even making it all the way to those 2 weeks to where you're out of money. I know, I've been there. It's not fun.
I hear you, man. So you have any other thoughts about anxiety before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I have quite a few.
John is never short of words, man.
Hey, I'm the rational voice in the world of chaos. That's my new tagline.
That's what some woman told John. So now he got a tattoo.
It's on my ass. No, I'm just kidding. There you go. I do have a quote by George Bernard Shaw. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So I think that's a lot of this, dealing with anxiety. First, assess, what's the stressor. Decide your expectations, decide your position, decide what needs to change. And then you can move into what can you do about it? And what are you doing about it now? Maybe what have you tried to do before that didn't work? What are you going to do in the future? And then take action. Hold yourself accountable. Not only hold yourself accountable, but have someone else very close to you hold you accountable. And what I mean by that is telling a person your plans to do something, whereas you will not like to tell them that you failed. Like, to me, that's true accountability. If you would just rather die than tell that person that you failed, that's the type of person you want as your accountability partner. Because you're going to need the attitude and the strength to get you through difficult times. And it's not easy. But if you have that hanging over your head to say, gee, I really can't tell Tom I failed, and I just want to avoid that at all costs. That is going to push you and be positive stress, eustress, which is beneficial, and is going to keep you on your toes, keep you focused, and keep you not distressed, but benefiting from the stress and the tension. And then after that, remember we talked about taking small steps. Each step that you take to reduce your anxiety is going to make you feel better. But there's going to be times where you screw up. We all screw up, and it's okay. Aim, fire, repeat. Make a decision, take action, and then repeat.
It's funny. I was listening to something Tony Robbins said, and he was saying that you get what you tolerate. He was saying that anxiety is a habit. And just like you train yourself physically, like working out, you have to train yourself to recognize when anxiety is setting on and to kind of like nip it in the bud. And I see this, hate to throw my mom under the bus, but my mom is one of those people that always needs something to worry about. And it could be something very minor, like, for a while it was her car. She's like, I just hope my car doesn't, break down because it's getting old. And it's like, Mom, your car's fine. You just had, you spent $1,000 and had it rebuilt. It's not, nothing else is happening. Don't worry about it. Oh, but my cat, I'm wondering if
Mr.
she's not
Whiskers?
feeling good, and it goes on. There's always something. It's like, come on, Mom, your cat's fine. Look, it's over there rolling around and, purring and everything's fine. So, yeah. So yeah, just like muscle, you can train yourself to recognize what I was talking about before, like when I had to tell myself to stop, to put in a different program, or if you meditate, or if you have some form of exercise that you can kind of, divert your mind away. Like we talk about the state of flow when you were talking about the positive side of stress. If you find something that flows, that you can completely absorbs your mind in order to do it, especially if it's physical, that stress will go away. I don't know if anyone's ever tried boxing or I used to do a martial art called Wing Chun, and we'd do something called sticky hands. It was sparring, but you would kind of just blank out your mind and react. You weren't using a strategy. You were flowing and reacting, and it would you could just feel. I remember I had a project at the time that I was working on, and I had my muscles were so tense in my back, they were aching. But as soon as I went to the Wing Chun class and I sparred a little bit, that would completely go away. It would just like the muscles would like I took a drug to release my muscle tension. It just went away. Yeah. Later on it would come back, but that activity is very helpful. So if you can find something that you can flow, or if you're a painter or artist, or playing a video game, whatever it might be, to take your mind off that worry, that helps a lot.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I've taken up playing guitar, just exactly for that same reason.
Music is great for that.
It's focusing your energy and teaching yourself how to refocus, take negative energy and turn it into something positive. Take your mind off of your problems, even if for a few minutes, can be very helpful. It's like, even if you go, if you're exercising, going and you have a terrible workout, that's much better than not going at all. You need time to, focus on yourself. It's okay. It's actually very, very healthy to do things like
Plus,
that.
when you're anxious, you have all those jacked up hormones in your body, man. You got to let that energy go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it turns back in on you. And can stress. We know can cause disease and all kinds of bad things on your body.
Yeah, it's okay to let things go, because if it's a real problem, it's going to come back.
And if you live in Colorado, you can light up a blunt
legally. But yeah, we're not recommending that as one of the things that you do. Again, that just, that doesn't take your problems away. It just gives you some respite, but it doesn't solve your problems.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things too, like when I was so in debt, of course, I have a family, and we have, things that we want and things that we need. Like, I think I've mentioned it on other shows. Like, we had this 15-year-old mattress that was like ruining our backs and uncomfortable to sleep on, and was just killing us and hurting our health. So we needed a new mattress. So I wrote down a list of all the things that I thought that we needed that would make me feel better about our situation, and didn't have a lot of money to do. So what I wrote down next to it how much money I thought it would cost to get that mattress, or to get a new dishwasher, or whatever, it was that I thought we needed to become happy again. And I kind of made a game out of it. And over time, through doing research and also kind of making some compromises, I found that I could get exactly what we needed for probably half as much as I thought, because I again built up this. I was getting anxious about saying I needed, a $1,500 mattress. Well, you know what? I didn't need a $1,500 mattress. I think we got one for, $400 or $500 or something like that. It's we create these anxieties in our head a lot of the time through creating false expectations. We build expectations up in our heads about what we want and how we expect things to be, and it doesn't mean that reality really is that way or needs to be that way. A lot of it begins with us. So I think that's I think that's a perfect way to end this episode, is that if you're looking to kick the crap out of your anxiety, think about what you're being anxious about. If you can't change it, then try to figure out a way to help let that go, including talking to a professional if it concerns you that much. If you think you can do something and affect change by taking action, then try to figure out what you're truly feeling anxious about, and start developing a plan to reduce that anxiety, reduce that feeling. And then,
if you want to learn some information too about anxiety's cousin, fear, right? We have several episodes of what was the
Field of
Fear and Do It Anyways or something. That was one of them.
That's a book.
No, that's a book.
It's an excellent book to read by Dr. Susan Jeffers, Field of Fear and Do It Anyway. But we also have
the only thing to fear,
sucker or something,
right? And we have the only thing to fear is fear itself. If you look through our back episodes, you'll find both of them. And I think especially the first one, the last one I just mentioned, I think we touched a lot on fear and how to cope with it. And anxiety and fear go hand in hand. They're one and the same in some aspects. So.
Yeah. Well, we hope that this episode helps you kick the crap out of your anxiety and helps you move forward and create positive change in your life, turning a negative energy into something more positive for your life, something that benefits you. And realize, again, we'll just say it again, distress, eustress, and relaxation, all different types of stress.
And make sure you check out the swiftkickinatheass.com, right, John? All you have to do is put an email in there. You'll get that access to our free membership site with John's simple spending tool, which will help you get $240,000 out of debt. Was that it?
Yep.
Yeah. So if it worked for him, it will work for you. It's free. Just put your email in there, swiftkickinatheass.com. And if you search us on Facebook. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on all the fun places and social media. And thanks for listening. Peace.
Thanks for listening. Peace.